A routine trip to the supermarket turns into an explosive confrontation when a racist police officer targets a black woman, hurling insults and accusations. Unbeknownst to him, she's not just another customer. She's the city's Supreme Court judge, and she's about to show him the true meaning of justice. As his career spirals out of control, her fight for accountability exposes a system rife with corruption. This story will leave you stunned and questioning everything about power and prejudice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more eye-opening stories that challenge the norm. The grocery store buzzed with activity as Monica Hayes, a black woman in her late 40s, browsed the produce section. Her movements were calm and deliberate, reflecting a composed demeanor that radiated confidence. Unbeknownst to her, Officer Derek Callahan, a middle-aged white cop with a history of arrogance and prejudice, observed her from a distance. His gaze hardened as he watched her, suspicions forming in his mind. Derek decided to approach, his steps purposeful and imposing. His pretense of politeness quickly gave way to thinly veiled hostility as he demanded Monica's identification. Monica, unshaken, calmly refused, asserting her right to privacy and questioning his authority. The tension between them drew the attention of nearby shoppers, creating an atmosphere charged with unease. Derek's frustration escalated, and he grabbed Monica's arm in an attempt to assert control. Monica's firm response made it clear she would not be intimidated, her voice carrying an authority that belied the apparent imbalance of power. The confrontation reached a boiling point as Derek tightened his grip, drawing murmurs and recording phones from the growing crowd. The store manager, Paul, intervened, his voice cutting through the tension as he confronted Derek. He defended Monica, asserting that she was a regular customer and had done nothing wrong. Derek reluctantly released her but issued a thinly veiled threat before storming out of the store, leaving Monica to continue her shopping, though the incident lingered heavily in the air. Outside, Derek's anger simmered as he paced near his car. Determined to reassert his authority, he called for backup, framing Monica as a potential suspect. Moments later, 2 patrol cars arrived, their flashing lights casting an ominous glow over the parking lot. Derek pointed Monica out to the arriving officers, who approached her with hesitation but followed Derek's lead. Monica, maintaining her composure, questioned the necessity of their actions. As they pressed her for answers, she calmly revealed her badge, identifying herself as a Supreme Court judge. The revelation sent shockwaves through the gathering, silencing Derek and stunning the onlookers. Monica's voice carried a quiet power as she made it clear she would file a formal complaint. The uniformed officers stepped back, their unease palpable as they realized the gravity of the situation. Derek's bravado crumbled, replaced by a growing awareness of the consequences his actions would bring. Monica drove away, leaving behind a shaken crowd and a rapidly unraveling narrative that Derek could no longer control. As the videos of the incident circulated online, the public reaction was swift and unrelenting. Derek, now the focus of widespread outrage, faced the collapse of his career and a reckoning that extended beyond the grocery store confrontation. Monica, undeterred by the ordeal, prepared to take further action, determined to ensure accountability and justice. Her resolve set the stage for a larger battle that would challenge systemic prejudices and abuses of power, echoing far beyond the immediate fallout. Derek Callahan sat in his car, his mind racing with anger and embarrassment. The revelation of Monica's position as a Supreme Court judge had blindsided him, leaving him humiliated and vulnerable. He replayed the scene in his head, searching for a way to twist the narrative in his favor. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from colleagues who had seen the viral video. Each notification was a reminder of his growing notoriety and the consequences that loomed. At the precinct, the atmosphere was tense. Officers whispered in corners, their conversations laced with speculation about Derek's future. The commanding officer, Captain Evans, called an emergency meeting to address the fallout. Evans's voice was stern as he demanded an explanation from Derek, who stood before his peers, attempting to mask his unease. Derek framed the incident as a misunderstanding, painting Monica as confrontational and uncooperative. His words were met with skeptical glances, but a few officers, particularly those who shared Derek's biases, nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Monica Hayes returned to her chambers, her mind focused on the steps she needed to take. Her assistant, Karen, had already begun compiling evidence, including witness statements and the unedited footage from the grocery store. Monica's resolve was unwavering. She knew this was not just about her, but about the countless others who had faced similar injustices. She contacted influential allies within the legal and activist communities, setting in motion a coordinated effort to expose systemic issues within the police force. As the hours passed, Derek's narrative began to unravel. Additional videos surfaced, clearly showing his aggressive behavior and Monica's composed responses. The public backlash intensified, with social media flooded with demands for his suspension and an independent investigation. The mayor's office issued a statement condemning the incident and pledging full transparency, adding pressure on the precinct to act swiftly. Derek's frustration grew as he became the target of relentless scrutiny. He reached out to his close ally, Officer Ted Larson, a veteran known for his disdain for oversight and accountability. Together, they devised a plan to discredit Monica by digging into her past. Ted suggested leveraging their connections within the department to access sensitive information, hoping to find anything that could be used against her. Derek, desperate to salvage his reputation, agreed without hesitation. Monica, unaware of the brewing plot, focused on building her case. She met with civil rights attorneys and community leaders, emphasizing the broader implications of her experience. Her candor and determination inspired those around her, galvanizing support for systemic reform. Her colleagues admired her courage, but they also warned her of the risks involved. Monica understood the stakes but refused to back down, knowing the fight was necessary. At the precinct, tensions escalated. Derek's actions had divided the officers, with some rallying behind him while others distanced themselves. Officer Sarah Carter, known for her integrity, voiced her concerns during a heated discussion in the break room. She criticized Derek's behavior, arguing that it undermined the values they were sworn to uphold. Her stance drew ire from Derek's supporters, who accused her of betrayal. The rift within the department deepened, reflecting the larger societal divide. As Derek and Ted worked to uncover dirt on Monica, they encountered unexpected resistance. Internal protocols limited their access to certain records, and whispers of their activities reached Captain Evans. The captain summoned them for a private meeting, his tone measured but firm. He warned them against pursuing personal vendettas, emphasizing the potential consequences for the department's reputation. Derek feigned compliance but remained undeterred, his desperation outweighing his caution. Monica's efforts bore fruit as more individuals came forward with stories of mistreatment by Derek and his allies. The emerging pattern painted a damning picture of abuse and impunity. Media outlets picked up the narrative, amplifying the calls for accountability. Public demonstrations erupted outside the precinct, with protesters demanding justice for Monica and systemic change. Derek's frustration boiled over during a late-night conversation with Ted. He expressed his anger at being vilified while Monica was hailed as a hero. Ted, sensing Derek's instability, urged him to stay focused on their plan. They decided to fabricate evidence suggesting that Monica had used her position to intimidate law enforcement in the past. Ted assured Derek that the narrative would shift in their favor once the story broke. Monica, ever vigilant, received a tip about Derek's activities from a sympathetic officer. She instructed her team to investigate discreetly, uncovering the plot to smear her reputation. Armed with this knowledge, Monica strategically released additional evidence of Derek's misconduct, including testimonies from fellow officers who had witnessed his behavior. The revelations further eroded Derek's credibility, isolating him within the department. Captain Evans, recognizing the gravity of the situation, convened a meeting with senior officials to discuss Derek's future. The consensus was clear: Derek's actions had become a liability. The captain informed Derek of his suspension pending a formal investigation, a decision that sent shockwaves through the precinct. Derek's anger reached a breaking point as he stormed out, vowing to fight back. Ted, sensing the walls closing in, began to distance himself from Derek. He contacted a legal advisor, seeking protection in exchange for cooperation. Derek, feeling betrayed, confronted Ted in a heated exchange that ended with their alliance in tatters. Alone and desperate, Derek resolved to take matters into his own hands, determined to silence Monica once and for all. Monica's resilience remained unshaken despite the mounting challenges. She continued to build alliances, rallying support from influential figures and grassroots organizations. Her story became a rallying cry for reform, inspiring a movement that extended far beyond her personal ordeal. The stage was set for a high-stakes confrontation, with the outcome poised to reshape the community and the justice system itself. Derek Callahan's suspension had thrown his life into chaos, but instead of reflecting on his actions, he channeled his energy into resentment and plotting revenge. His growing obsession with Monica Hayes consumed him, and his isolation only fueled his paranoia. He spent hours scrolling through online forums, reading comments that either condemned him or championed his false narrative. Among the latter, Derek found a small group of supporters who shared his prejudiced views and disdain for accountability. Through private messages, he began to form alliances with these individuals, seeing them as potential allies in his fight against Monica and the system. At the same time, Monica's determination to expose corruption within the police force gained momentum. Her legal team uncovered a trove of evidence that not only highlighted Derek's history of misconduct, but also implicated several other officers. These findings painted a disturbing picture of a culture of complicity and systemic abuse. Monica's allies within the legal community strategized on how to present the evidence, knowing it could lead to a public reckoning for the department. Within the precinct, the divide among officers deepened. Sarah Carter's vocal criticism of Derek and his actions made her a target for hostility. Officers loyal to Derek whispered accusations of betrayal and undermined her credibility at every opportunity. Sarah, undeterred, began documenting instances of harassment, preparing to use her position to challenge the toxic culture that had taken root. She found unexpected allies in younger officers who admired her courage and were eager to see meaningful change. Derek's former ally, Ted Larson, now faced his own moral dilemma. After severing ties with Derek, he struggled with guilt over his role in enabling Derek's behavior. Ted wrestled with the decision to come forward with what he knew, fearing retaliation from both the department and Derek. The pressure mounted as investigators began questioning officers about their knowledge of Derek's actions, inching closer to uncovering the web of misconduct that extended beyond a single individual. Monica's public profile continued to rise as media outlets covered her story extensively. Interviews with Monica highlighted her resolve and the broader implications of her fight for justice. Public opinion overwhelmingly supported her, with protests and rallies organized in her name. These events became platforms for others to share their experiences with systemic racism and abuse of power, amplifying the call for reform. Meanwhile, Derek's online network grew more emboldened. He and his newfound allies began coordinating efforts to smear Monica further. Using doctored photos and fabricated documents, they created a campaign to discredit her character and professionalism. The materials were disseminated through anonymous accounts, spreading misinformation designed to sow doubt among her supporters. The strategy initially gained traction, but Monica's team quickly countered with verifiable evidence that exposed the campaign as a baseless attack. Captain Evans, under mounting pressure to address the department's failures, launched an internal review. He met with Sarah Carter and other officers willing to speak out, compiling testimonies that corroborated the allegations against Derek and others. The review uncovered a pattern of deliberate inaction by senior officials who had ignored or covered up misconduct for years. Evans, though conflicted, recognized that his leadership would be scrutinized as well. He resolved to cooperate fully, knowing it was the only way to restore credibility to the department. Derek's desperation reached a breaking point when investigators subpoenaed his personal communications, uncovering incriminating exchanges with his online collaborators. The evidence linked him to the smear campaign against Monica and revealed his attempts to obstruct the investigation. Facing possible criminal charges, Derek lashed out, blaming everyone but himself for his predicament. His once loyal supporters began distancing themselves, unwilling to be dragged down with him. Monica, aware of the escalating stakes, intensified her efforts to build a coalition for reform. She met with community leaders, law enforcement reform advocates, and politicians, urging them to support comprehensive changes to policing practices. Her message resonated, drawing national attention and sparking debates on accountability and systemic bias. Monica's composure and eloquence made her a compelling figure, but she remained grounded, emphasizing that the fight was about collective progress rather than personal vindication. As the investigation neared its conclusion, tensions within the department boiled over. Officers loyal to Derek grew increasingly vocal, accusing the leadership of capitulating to public pressure. Fights broke out in the precinct, and disciplinary actions became commonplace. Amid the chaos, Sarah Carter emerged as a steady voice of reason, rallying like-minded officers to push for accountability and transparency. Her efforts earned her both admiration and hostility, solidifying her role as a key figure in the department's transformation. Ted Larson, unable to bear the weight of his secrets, finally decided to cooperate with investigators. His testimony provided critical insights into the inner workings of the department and exposed the network of officers who had shielded Derek. Ted's decision marked a turning point in the investigation, paving the way for a comprehensive reckoning. The culmination of the inquiry brought devastating consequences for Derek and his allies. The findings were made public in a scathing report that detailed years of abuse and corruption. Derek was formally charged with multiple offenses, including obstruction of justice and harassment. Several senior officers resigned or were terminated, and the department announced sweeping reforms to address the systemic issues that had been uncovered. Monica's fight did not end with the report. She continued to advocate for lasting change, leveraging her platform to push for policy reforms and increased community oversight. Her resilience inspired a movement that extended far beyond her city, highlighting the power of accountability and the importance of standing against injustice. In the aftermath, Derek's fall from grace served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and prejudice. Monica's journey, though fraught with challenges, became a beacon of hope for those striving to create a more equitable and just society. The battle was far from over, but the seeds of change had been sown, and the momentum for progress showed no signs of slowing. The aftermath of Derek Callahan's indictment sent shockwaves through the precinct, dividing the department even further. Tensions rose as officers chose sides, with a vocal minority rallying behind Derek, accusing the leadership of caving to political pressure. These supporters viewed Monica Hayes not as a symbol of accountability, but as a threat to their way of operating. On the other side, reform-minded officers, led by Sarah Carter, doubled down on their efforts to dismantle the toxic culture that had allowed Derek's behavior to flourish unchecked. Derek's allies, emboldened by the backlash against the investigation, began organizing clandestine meetings to strategize ways to undermine Monica's credibility and derail the reforms. Among them was Sergeant Alan Briggs, a seasoned officer known for his cunning and ability to manipulate situations to his advantage. Briggs spearheaded a covert operation to gather dirt on Monica, believing that exposing even a minor flaw in her past could shift public opinion and halt the momentum of change. Meanwhile, Monica's focus remained steadfast. She met with community leaders to discuss the implementation of policies aimed at increasing transparency within the police force. Her determination was unshaken, but the constant attacks on her character began to take a toll. Her assistant, Karen, grew concerned as Monica worked long hours, her resolve unwavering despite the mounting stress. Karen urged her to delegate some responsibilities, but Monica's conviction kept her at the forefront of the fight. Ted Larson, now cooperating with investigators, became a pivotal figure in uncovering the depth of corruption within the precinct. His detailed accounts implicated several high-ranking officers who had not only protected Derek but also engaged in their own misconduct. As Ted's testimony gained traction, Captain Evans made the difficult decision to launch a full-scale internal investigation, knowing it would further strain the department's already fragile unity. Briggs, sensing the walls closing in, escalated his efforts to sabotage Monica. He enlisted a tech-savvy contact to hack into Monica's personal and professional records, hoping to uncover anything that could be twisted into a scandal. The hacker's search yielded little, but Briggs seized on an old photo of Monica attending a protest during her college years. He crafted a narrative suggesting that Monica's activism made her biased against law enforcement, leaking the story to sympathetic media outlets. The smear campaign gained traction, with headlines questioning Monica's impartiality. Social media exploded with heated debates, and Monica's office was inundated with hate mail and threats. Karen and Monica's legal team worked tirelessly to counter the narrative, releasing statements that highlighted Monica's lifelong commitment to justice and equality. The support from her allies helped stem the tide, but the damage to her reputation lingered. Sarah Carter, witnessing the effects of the smear campaign, rallied her fellow reform-minded officers to stand publicly with Monica. They organized a press conference where officers shared stories of how Monica's leadership had inspired them to hold themselves to higher standards. The event was a powerful counterpoint to the attacks, shifting the narrative back in Monica's favor and reinforcing the need for systemic change. Briggs, furious that his plan had backfired, became increasingly desperate. He convened another secret meeting with Derek's remaining supporters, proposing a risky maneuver to undermine the internal investigation. Briggs suggested planting false evidence implicating Monica in an abuse of power, confident that even an unproven allegation would cast doubt on her integrity. Some of the officers hesitated, recognizing the potential consequences, but Briggs's persuasive tactics convinced them to proceed. Monica's team, aware of the lengths to which her opponents would go, intensified their security measures. A trusted IT consultant was brought in to monitor for cyberattacks, while Karen meticulously vetted all correspondence. Their vigilance paid off when they intercepted an attempt to plant fabricated documents in Monica's office. The discovery provided irrefutable proof of the conspiracy against her, turning the tables on Briggs and his cohort. Captain Evans, presented with the evidence of the plot, faced a critical decision. Publicly addressing the conspiracy risked further destabilizing the department, but remaining silent would compromise the integrity of the investigation. Evans chose transparency, holding a press conference to reveal the sabotage attempt and reaffirm the department's commitment to reform. The announcement was met with mixed reactions, with some officers applauding his courage while others accused him of betrayal. Derek, now fully isolated, watched his support network crumble. The revelation of the conspiracy deepened his legal troubles, adding charges of obstruction of justice and conspiracy to his growing list of offenses. Ted Larson's testimony became a focal point in the prosecution's case, painting a vivid picture of Derek's abuses and the systemic failures that enabled them. Monica, though vindicated, knew the fight was far from over. She doubled down on her advocacy efforts, pushing for independent oversight committees and mandatory bias training for officers. Her resilience inspired a wave of grassroots activism, with communities across the city organizing to demand accountability and transparency in law enforcement. The tension within the precinct reached a breaking point when Sarah Carter confronted Briggs directly. In a heated exchange, she condemned his actions and called for his resignation. Briggs, cornered and without allies, lashed out but ultimately stepped down, his departure marking a turning point in the department's struggle for reform. Sarah's bold stance earned her widespread respect, solidifying her role as a leader in the movement for change. As the dust began to settle, the department implemented sweeping reforms, including stricter oversight protocols and increased community engagement initiatives. Monica's efforts had not only exposed the corruption within the precinct, but also galvanized a broader movement for justice. While challenges remained, the progress achieved was undeniable, and the city began to heal from the fractures caused by years of unchecked abuse. Derek's trial became a national spectacle, with Monica testifying about the incident that had set everything in motion. Her testimony was measured and powerful, a testament to her unwavering commitment to justice. The jury's swift conviction of Derek marked the culmination of a hard-fought battle, but for Monica and her allies, it was just one step in a larger journey toward lasting change. The precinct, though still grappling with its divided loyalties, began to rebuild under new leadership committed to upholding the values that had long been neglected. Sarah Carter and her reformist allies worked tirelessly to foster a culture of accountability and respect, setting an example for departments across the country. Monica Hayes, having turned a personal ordeal into a catalyst for systemic transformation, remained a steadfast advocate for equity and fairness, her legacy cemented as a beacon of hope in the fight against injustice. The trial of Derek Callahan began under intense public scrutiny. The courtroom was filled with reporters, legal analysts, and community leaders who had followed Monica Hayes' journey and the ensuing investigation. Derek, seated at the defense table, appeared defiant, his expression oscillating between anger and unease. His defense team, led by a high-profile attorney, sought to frame the case as a political witch hunt, arguing that Derek had been scapegoated to placate public outrage. Monica Hayes, resolute as ever, took the stand on the first day of testimony. Her calm demeanor and articulate responses left an indelible impression on the jury. She recounted the events at the supermarket, emphasizing the broader implications of Derek's actions and the systemic issues they reflected. The prosecution presented compelling evidence, including video footage, witness testimonies, and records of Derek's history of misconduct. Each piece painted a damning picture of abuse and impunity. Meanwhile, Sarah Carter's efforts within the precinct faced renewed resistance. The departure of Alan Briggs had left a power vacuum among the old guard, and a few remaining officers sought to consolidate their influence. They quietly rallied support, framing the reforms as detrimental to morale and operational efficiency. Sarah, undeterred, continued to champion transparency and accountability, working closely with Captain Evans to implement new policies. She knew the stakes extended beyond the department. The outcome would set a precedent for reform efforts nationwide. Derek's allies, though diminished, remained active. Among them was Officer Neil Forrester, who viewed the trial as a direct attack on law enforcement. Neil began meeting with a group of officers and former colleagues sympathetic to Derek, discussing ways to sway public opinion and disrupt Monica's advocacy. Their tactics included spreading misinformation through anonymous social media accounts and leaking selective, misleading information about the investigation to sympathetic media outlets. Monica's team anticipated these moves and prepared countermeasures. Karen, her assistant, coordinated with legal and communications experts to debunk false claims swiftly. They also worked to amplify positive narratives, highlighting Monica's integrity and the broader significance of the trial. Public support remained strong, with rallies and demonstrations drawing diverse crowds united in their call for justice. Ted Larson, whose testimony had been instrumental in the investigation, found himself grappling with guilt and isolation. His cooperation had alienated him from many former colleagues, leaving him a pariah within the law enforcement community. Ted's unease grew as he received anonymous threats, warning him to stay silent. Despite his fears, Ted resolved to testify in court, understanding the importance of his role in exposing the truth. As the trial progressed, the defense sought to undermine Monica's credibility. They scrutinized her past decisions as a judge, attempting to paint her as biased and overreaching. Monica, unflinching, responded with clarity and conviction, turning the attacks into opportunities to underscore her commitment to justice. The prosecution countered by presenting evidence of Derek's deliberate attempts to sabotage Monica's reputation, further eroding his credibility. Outside the courtroom, tensions escalated. Supporters of Derek clashed with demonstrators advocating for accountability. The confrontations, though largely peaceful, underscored the deep divisions the case had exposed. Community leaders worked tirelessly to maintain order, organizing dialogues and forums to address grievances and foster understanding. Monica's presence at these events reinforced her role as a unifying figure, bridging divides with her unwavering message of equity and accountability. Neil Forrester, emboldened by the defense's tactics, escalated his efforts to disrupt the proceedings. He orchestrated a scheme to tamper with key evidence, enlisting the help of a disgruntled former precinct employee with access to sensitive files. The plot unraveled when an IT specialist discovered anomalies in the digital records. The revelation not only thwarted the scheme but also implicated Neil and his accomplice, leading to their arrests. The scandal further discredited Derek's supporters and underscored the pervasive corruption Monica had sought to expose. Sarah Carter's resolve was tested as she navigated the fallout from Neil's arrest. She faced increased hostility from colleagues who accused her of betraying the department. Undeterred, Sarah doubled down on her efforts to mentor younger officers, emphasizing the importance of integrity and public trust. Her commitment inspired a growing faction within the precinct, signaling a shift in the department's culture. Back in the courtroom, the prosecution's case reached its crescendo with Ted Larson's testimony. Ted's detailed account of Derek's actions and the systemic failures that enabled them was both compelling and harrowing. He spoke of his own complicity with candor, acknowledging his mistakes and expressing remorse. His testimony was a turning point, solidifying the prosecution's narrative and leaving a profound impact on the jury. The defense, recognizing the strength of the prosecution's case, attempted a last-ditch effort to sway the jury. They called Derek to the stand, where he portrayed himself as a dedicated officer unfairly targeted for doing his job. His testimony, however, lacked credibility, as the prosecution's cross-examination methodically dismantled his claims. The juxtaposition of Derek's defiance and Monica's poise left little doubt about where the truth lay. The jury's deliberation was brief but thorough. Their unanimous verdict found Derek guilty on all charges, a decision met with a mixture of relief and vindication among Monica's supporters. The sentencing, which included a substantial prison term, marked a decisive victory for accountability and justice. In the aftermath, Monica Hayes reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The trial was a significant milestone, but she knew the fight for systemic reform was far from over. She continued to advocate for policies that addressed the root causes of inequality and abuse, leveraging her platform to drive meaningful change. The precinct, under Captain Evans's leadership, implemented comprehensive reforms aimed at rebuilding trust with the community. Sarah Carter played a pivotal role in these efforts, her unwavering dedication earning her a promotion to a leadership position. The department's transformation became a model for other jurisdictions, demonstrating the power of accountability and collaboration. Derek's downfall served as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and prejudice. For Monica, Sarah, and countless others, it was a testament to the resilience of those who dared to challenge the status quo. The journey was arduous, but the progress made was undeniable, paving the way for a more just and equitable future. The sentencing of Derek Callahan sent ripples through the city, with reactions ranging from outrage to triumph. While the courtroom had delivered justice, the impact of the trial reverberated far beyond its walls. Monica Hayes's resolve to dismantle the entrenched corruption in law enforcement remained unshaken, and her supporters grew more determined to push for systemic change. Yet, the forces aligned against her were far from defeated, and the stakes only heightened as the aftermath unfolded. Within the precinct, tensions reached a fever pitch. Captain Evans faced an uphill battle in stabilizing the fractured department. Sarah Carter, now promoted to a leadership role, found herself at the center of both support and hostility. Her new responsibilities included overseeing reforms, a task that drew sharp criticism from officers resistant to change. Among them was Lieutenant Ray Porter, a seasoned officer who saw the reforms as a threat to the traditional power structures he had long relied on. Porter's subtle undermining of Sarah's authority created constant friction, further complicating her efforts to lead effectively. Meanwhile, Derek's former ally, Neil Forrester, languished in custody, his arrest exposing a deeper web of conspiracies within the department. Investigators uncovered evidence of a clandestine network of officers who had actively worked to protect Derek and discredit Monica. As the scope of the corruption became clear, Monica's legal team pushed for an independent inquiry to root out those complicit in the systemic failures. The city's leadership, facing mounting public pressure, authorized the investigation, setting the stage for a sweeping overhaul of the department. Monica's advocacy extended beyond the courtroom. She organized town halls and community forums, creating spaces for residents to voice their concerns and share their experiences with law enforcement. At one such event, a mother tearfully recounted how her son had been wrongfully detained by officers under Derek's command, sparking a wave of similar stories that underscored the urgent need for reform. Monica listened intently, her determination to fight for justice reaffirmed by the resilience of those she sought to represent. As the independent inquiry unfolded, the spotlight turned to Lieutenant Porter. Anonymous tips and leaked documents implicated him in several instances of misconduct, including tampering with evidence and intimidating witnesses. Porter's allies within the department rallied to his defense, framing the accusations as baseless attacks motivated by political agendas. However, Sarah's diligent documentation of Porter's actions provided investigators with a clear trail of evidence, weakening his position. Porter, feeling the pressure closing in, reached out to former colleagues with connections to the media, hoping to control the narrative. Articles critical of Monica and the inquiry began circulating, painting her efforts as overreach and accusing her of fostering division within the department. The smear campaign gained traction, sowing doubt among some members of the public. Monica's team countered with transparency, releasing detailed reports that highlighted the findings of the inquiry and the necessity of the reforms. Amid the chaos, Monica's personal life faced challenges of its own. The relentless scrutiny and threats took a toll on her relationships, leaving her increasingly isolated. Karen, ever the stalwart assistant, urged Monica to take time for herself, but Monica's sense of duty left little room for respite. She confided in Sarah during a rare moment of quiet, expressing her fears about the enormity of the task ahead. Sarah, drawing strength from Monica's resilience, reassured her that the fight was worth every sacrifice. The inquiry's findings culminated in a high-stakes hearing, where officers implicated in the corruption faced public scrutiny. Lieutenant Porter's testimony, marked by defiance and denial, unraveled under cross-examination as investigators presented irrefutable evidence of his actions. The hearing exposed a culture of silence and complicity, prompting calls for accountability from both the public and within the department. As the hearing progressed, a surprise witness came forward, a young officer named James Morales, who had been mentored by Porter. Morales's testimony revealed the extent of Porter's influence and the fear he instilled in those under his command. Morales's decision to speak out marked a turning point, shattering the remaining support for Porter and galvanizing reform-minded officers. Sarah's leadership during this critical moment earned her widespread respect, solidifying her position as a trusted advocate for change. Monica's visibility continued to grow, attracting attention from national advocacy groups and policymakers. Her efforts inspired similar initiatives in other cities, sparking a broader movement for police reform. However, with increased influence came heightened risks. Monica's security team intercepted credible threats, forcing her to take additional precautions. Despite the dangers, Monica remained undeterred, viewing the threats as a testament to the impact of her work. The fallout from the inquiry led to a series of resignations and disciplinary actions within the precinct. Officers implicated in wrongdoing faced termination and, in some cases, criminal charges. The department's leadership implemented sweeping changes, including the establishment of an independent oversight board and mandatory training programs on bias and de-escalation techniques. These reforms, though significant, faced resistance from skeptics who questioned their efficacy. Monica and Sarah, buoyed by the progress, recognized the need to maintain momentum. They worked closely with community leaders to ensure the reforms were not only implemented but also sustained. Grassroots initiatives, such as mentorship programs and joint community police workshops, fostered dialogue and trust, laying the groundwork for a more collaborative relationship between law enforcement and the public. Lieutenant Porter, stripped of his rank and facing criminal charges, became a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power. His downfall marked a symbolic victory for those fighting for accountability, but Monica and Sarah understood that true change required more than individual consequences. They continued to advocate for systemic reforms, emphasizing the importance of addressing the root causes of inequality and abuse. As the city grappled with the aftermath of the inquiry, a sense of cautious optimism began to take hold. The precinct's transformation, though far from complete, demonstrated the potential for meaningful progress when accountability and collaboration were prioritized. Monica's unwavering commitment to justice served as a beacon of hope, inspiring others to join the fight for a fairer, more equitable society. In a quiet moment of reflection, Monica stood before a group of young advocates, sharing the lessons she had learned throughout her journey. Her words carried the weight of experience and the promise of a brighter future. The fight was far from over, but Monica Hayes had proven that even in the face of adversity, the pursuit of justice could prevail. The final chapter of Monica Hayes's journey began with the announcement of the Federal Oversight Initiative, a citywide program designed to ensure long-term accountability in law enforcement. While the reforms implemented within the precinct had brought some stability, the initiative symbolized a larger commitment to dismantling systemic corruption. The announcement reignited tensions within the department and the community, as the deep wounds exposed during the inquiry had yet to fully heal. Sarah Carter, now firmly entrenched in her leadership role, faced the daunting task of rallying the department behind the initiative. While many officers had come to respect her, a vocal minority continued to resist. Among them was Officer Gerald Pike, an influential figure within the old guard who had quietly rebuilt support among those opposed to the changes. Pike viewed the federal oversight as an affront to the department's autonomy and began orchestrating a campaign to undermine Sarah's authority. Pike's efforts were methodical. He spread rumors questioning Sarah's competence, citing fabricated incidents of mismanagement. Through backchannels, he coordinated with local politicians and media outlets sympathetic to his cause, framing the oversight initiative as a federal overreach that threatened the city's safety. The narrative gained traction, creating an undercurrent of doubt within the department and the community. Monica, acutely aware of the growing resistance, intensified her efforts to build public support for the initiative. She collaborated with community leaders to host town halls, where residents could voice their concerns and learn about the benefits of the program. At one such event, A young activist named Elena Torres shared her experience of being targeted by officers during a protest. Her story resonated deeply, galvanizing support among attendees and shifting the focus back to the need for accountability. As the campaign for federal oversight gained momentum, Monica received an anonymous tip about a covert meeting involving Pike and several high-ranking officers. The meeting, held at a secluded location, was reportedly intended to discuss strategies for sabotaging the initiative. Monica enlisted the help of Marcus Green, a trusted ally within the department, to verify the information. Marcus's discreet investigation confirmed the meeting and uncovered plans to stage a high-profile incident that would discredit the reforms. With this revelation, Monica and Sarah convened an emergency strategy session. They decided to preempt the sabotage by exposing the plot to the public. Marcus provided detailed evidence, including recordings of the meeting and communications between Pike and his co-conspirators. Monica presented the findings at a press conference, her voice unwavering as she detailed the lengths to which some were willing to go to maintain the status quo. The exposure of the plot sent shockwaves through the city, further isolating Pike and his allies. The fallout from the revelation was swift. Pike was suspended pending an internal investigation, and several officers implicated in the plot faced disciplinary action. The remaining members of the old guard, realizing the extent of their vulnerability, began to distance themselves from Pike's faction. Sarah used the opportunity to strengthen alliances with reform-minded officers, fostering a sense of unity within the department. Despite these victories, Monica knew the fight was far from over. The backlash against the federal oversight initiative continued, fueled by misinformation and fear-mongering. Monica's team worked tirelessly to counter the narratives, producing informational campaigns that highlighted the positive impact of the reforms. Community leaders, inspired by Monica's resilience, organized grassroots efforts to support the initiative, including rallies and social media campaigns that emphasized the importance of accountability. As public opinion began to shift in favor of the oversight initiative, Monica received another anonymous message. This time, the tip alluded to a shadowy figure orchestrating the resistance from behind the scenes, a well-connected individual with ties to both the political and law enforcement spheres. Monica tasked her team with uncovering the identity of this figure, recognizing that their influence posed a significant threat to the progress being made. The investigation led to Victor Caldwell, a wealthy businessman with a history of funding political campaigns and lobbying against regulatory measures. Caldwell's connections within the police department and city government allowed him to exert considerable influence, and his financial backing of anti-reform efforts made him a formidable adversary. Monica's team uncovered a trove of evidence linking Caldwell to the smear campaigns and sabotage attempts, including financial transactions and communications with Pike's faction. Monica's decision to confront Caldwell directly marked a pivotal moment. She arranged a private meeting, where she presented the evidence against him and warned of the consequences of his continued interference. Caldwell, initially dismissive, was taken aback by Monica's resolve and the strength of her case. Recognizing the futility of further resistance, he agreed to withdraw his support for the anti-reform efforts, though his motivations remained far from altruistic. With Caldwell's retreat, the opposition's momentum faltered. The federal oversight initiative was formally approved, marking a significant milestone in Monica's fight for accountability. The program included the establishment of an independent review board, enhanced training protocols, and mechanisms for community input on policing policies. These measures, though imperfect, represented a critical step toward rebuilding trust and fostering transparency. The implementation of the initiative was not without challenges. Officers resistant to change tested the limits of the new protocols, while skeptics within the community remained wary of the department's commitment to reform. Sarah, drawing on her experiences, worked tirelessly to bridge these divides, emphasizing the importance of collaboration and mutual respect. Her efforts began to yield results, as incremental progress restored faith in the system. Monica's leadership extended beyond the city, as her advocacy inspired similar initiatives in other jurisdictions. She became a sought-after speaker at national conferences, sharing her experiences and strategies for driving systemic change. Her work earned widespread recognition, but Monica remained grounded, always returning to the community that had entrusted her with their stories and struggles. The precinct, though transformed, continued to grapple with its legacy. Officers like Marcus Green and Sarah Carter emerged as leaders of a new era, embodying the values of integrity and service. The department's progress served as a model for others, demonstrating the potential for meaningful reform when accountability and community engagement were prioritized. As Monica reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment, she recognized the resilience and courage of those who had stood beside her. The fight for justice was far from over, but the progress made was a testament to the power of persistence and collaboration. Monica Hayes, once a target of prejudice and hostility, had become a symbol of hope and determination, her legacy etched in the hearts of those she had inspired to believe in a better future.